Okay, good evening and welcome to the Bethel Board of Education board meeting in regards to the Facilities Committee. The time is 6:04 p.m. Call the roll. Rick Gilbert, Justin Ferks, present. Tina Hegeman,
Present.
Caleb Barunkel, absent. Jessica France,
Present.
Danny Elam,
Here.
Lori Sebastian,
Here.
Julie Reese. Okay, next on the agenda would be any potential additions to this evening's discussion. Okay, well, moving on, we'll go to communications, meetings, and announcements. Okay, moving right along. Items for discussion. Several items that will be on the agenda this evening to provide updates to will obviously be the K-5 project update. Also have an update on the athletic stadium portion of the project as well. Hopefully each and every one of you have received the handout that was provided by Peterson. Essentially, I just copy and pasted it to a Word document, and then I added a couple of additional bullet points as our discussions took place today during the core portion of our team meeting. In regards to Bethel Elementary progress report, I've had a lot of good news, especially with the weather clearing up this week. Masonry foundations are 98% complete, and Peterson fully anticipated that that work would wrap up this week with no rain in the forecast until potentially the weekend. If you've had a chance to drive by the facility recently, you've noticed that the masonry work is going up around the gymnasium box, and they also anticipate that that work will be completed in the next week or so as well. The next steps will to continue to put the scaffolding up, and you'll begin to see the masonry work begin around the dining room box in the next several weeks. They received some updates from their suppliers. The first structural steel materials are due to arrive on site right around June 1st, and then they fully anticipate that steel will go up right after that as well. So, which is good news, because I know at one point in time they were a little bit worried or concerned about supply chain and items being delivered in a timely manner. But credit to Peterson and also Bruns and Garmin-Miller for staying on top of things and having things ordered and arriving in a timely manner so that the project doesn't have any delays or hiccups. You'll also see that underground plumbing work continues to go in at around all sections of the building site. That work is going to continue for the foreseeable future, because once they get the K-5 site done, they're also going to have to start working on plumbing work to the stadium portion of the project as well. Some more good news for the project. All of the electrical underground work has been completed, so that's been wrapped up. Peterson and Garmin & Miller did talk a little bit about the work on the site and the amount of bedrock that they've encountered throughout the project. They did have contingency money or funds available not only for rock removal, but also unsuitable soils. Excuse me. And just for transparency's sake, they have utilized both of those funds already throughout the project. They fully anticipated that the majority of the work with the rock processes they've already dealt with and encountered, and they felt pretty good about it. We did have some preliminary discussion in regards to getting power to the building site and maybe running that power lines above ground instead of underground, as far as trying to avoid running into any more additional rock. So those were just some preliminary discussions that we had during our core team meeting. They're going to obviously do some more investigation and develop some more information for us and get us a general idea of what that would cost. I would think it would probably be cheaper to run above ground than it would be underground. And then once we get those costs, we'll have to make a decision as a collective group. Slab preparation is ongoing. They fully anticipate that they will have completed the far north end of the building in the next week. Once those slabs are poured and set, they will begin to move to the south half of the building project, and that work will continue. Because the weather's anticipated to be so nice this week, Peterson fully anticipated being able to pour 3 slabs total this week. We've also received an update in regards to ODOT. They've provided comments to the construction manager at risk, which was Peterson, on the State Route 201 widening and turn lane project. Right now, the ball is kind of in AES, or Pioneers Courts. They have to take the information that's been provided, those 4 or 5 power poles that need to be relocated along 201 all the way to Agenbrod, and then it will take them about 6 to 9 weeks to do a redesign for those relocation of the power poles. Peterson and the collective group was a little concerned that the 6 to 9 week time frame may delay work and not allow it to take place this summer, but it's kind of at a to be determined status for now. Initially, they had talked about 6 weeks total, so the additional 3 weeks could throw a little bit of a wrench into the summer plans for 201 and the widening in the right-hand turn lane coming from Agenbrod to the south, turning into the building.
Yeah, and the big reason we would like to get that done this summer is to understand what the costs are going to be, because that turn lane they've allocated, I think they said $500,000 for, but costs keep going up, up, up. So we'd like to get that done this summer if at all possible. So they're going to work with AES and see if they can't hurry it along, but the whole thing has not been a hurry process between permitting and all the different facets that need done. So we'll see.
Any questions in regards to what's been provided so far on the elementary progress report as of today? Yeah, that's fine.
They are DP&L polls.
DP&L polls.
Julie, why don't you try that, because that way we'll know if it works for tonight. Please, thank you.
How's that? You want me to repeat it? Okay, so my question is, I thought the polls leading up to Agenbrod were DP&L, but you said Pioneer, so is Pioneer designing the change, or do we just have those mixed up?
Here on our sheet it says AES/Pioneer.
Oh, AES is DP&L.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
So they're both working together
Right.
on the portion of the project. Any other questions in regards to elementary progress report?
There was one other, as we were talking about alternates, one thing that was brought up was our 2 top alternates are finishing the 5th grade wing and then the interactive monitors, and Tina's going to check some more on those interactive monitors and see if we can use the ESSER funds for that, if that's one of the allowable uses, because I think technology is one of the things we can use them for, so that might be a good way to get that money allocated appropriately and would help the budget there. So I just wanted to mention that. She'll hopefully give us an update next month, right, Tina?
That's the goal, yes.
Sounds like a great thing, because then we don't have to use our capital improvements money.
we've already allocated 350,000 of the permanent improvement funds, so I'll be following up with Glenn from Peterson and seeing what we can do as far as that's concerned. But we don't want to allocate any more. So if we can use the ESSER funds to purchase things like the interactive projectors, then that would, certainly save us some money. That's 134,000 if I recall right off the top of my head. So that would free up some money to be used on the 5th grade wing. So that's the goal.
And I did want to mention all the contingencies right now look really good. In fact, one of the contingencies is negative because I think something was removed from the project. So I told Glenn with Peterson I'd like to see that continue for the duration of the project, and I think he laughed at me.
Yeah, right now we've added roughly $40,000 to the contingency funds from where it started out at, just from removal of items that necessarily weren't required. So part of that's been leaning on Garmin and Peterson to give recommendations on exactly what's needed from the design and what's not. Any other comments or questions on the elementary progress report?
Have you had an update lately on LEAD and where we stand with that? Or can you pass that question along?
Yeah, I can pass that along. We haven't even discussed it at all.
Okay, thanks.
Typically, they put together the agenda, so I don't know if it's necessarily a huge priority on their end right now because they're working through so many other things, but I will send an email to Laura tomorrow and ask where she's at on that process.
No, I totally get that. I just knew we hadn't heard about it in a while, so I just thought I'd ask.
Sure. Lead?
About LEAD, the LEAD certification where we need to be silver, and I was just curious where we were.
Well, and the reason I'm concerned about that is that could also be tens of thousands, or hopefully not hundreds of thousands of dollars of contingency, but the LEAD requirements are pretty steep right now. So they've been through it with another district or two, so hopefully things will work out. I have confidence in them, but I would like to see that moved along so we know where we stand.
I wanted a question not related. Is it working? Okay. So I'm going to ask again about the virtual tour. Every month we say it's next month. We get any updates on that?
Sure. The last time you asked, I said I will follow up. I have, and I'm still waiting for a response. So I will follow up again to see where they're at.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, as far as athletic stadium update, the dirt work on the football stadium portion of the project has begun, and that will be ongoing for the next couple of weeks. The Athletic Boosters is planning on meeting with their bank representatives this week to submit paperwork to secure a loan. They are looking at taking out a $1 million construction loan with the understanding that they will only be able to draw on what has currently been raised. To date, roughly the $600,000+ has been raised by the athletic department and the athletic boosters. Of that, these are approximate numbers. Of that, $562,000 has come from sponsorships and corporate sponsorships. $38,000 has come from community donations, such as the Legacy campaign. Because of this, we discussed towards the end of the meeting when we were geared towards the athletic stadium portion of the conversation. The project is looking at transitioning away from an artificial surface to a natural grass surface, which will reduce costs because we had anticipated trying to raise $1 million, and we're roughly $400,000 below that goal. And that additional savings with moving to natural surface will allow other portions of the athletic stadium project to be completed. This would include supplies, which is basically materials for construction of the field house, the purchase of the scoreboard, and then also running power from the field house to the scoreboard, and also power to the lights. And then it will also allow us to purchase the necessary amount of bleachers, and we've talked about potentially placing a concrete pad underneath the bleachers as well, which could potentially hold up better with weeds and those kind of things, but we're still waiting on costs for concrete to do that, and if it becomes in too expensive, that obviously we would use gravel instead as well. So that kind of gives you an update on where we're at with the athletic stadium portion of the project. Any questions from the collective group?
I'd just like to follow up that I asked Tina and Peterson to put together a chart for us because it's starting to get, or has been, confusing, the budgets, because some of this is just handled by us, some of this is handled by the overall construction budget. So they're going to put a list together, and I know Todd Bird is getting quotes in for some of this stuff. It's going to have, this is in the budget, this Boosters is going to provide, and then this is options. That way we know what's covered and what's not. It's very clear. One of the reasons this decision was made, as Justin's already mentioned, is if we put turf in and we don't have bleachers or field house, that's a problem. So we talked in the meeting about construction costs going up 20%, or really more than that, over 20%. So you have to make choices when that happens, and that's what we're doing. So
Well, that's disappointing, but I certainly understand.
it also still gives us the possibility, if there are funds left, to finish the 5th grade wing, which we all said was the highest priority. So I think it's the right decision to make based on the cost right now.
Any other questions or comments in regards to the athletic stadium portion of the project?
And there's one other thing I'll say. Sorry, my brain's kind of thinking about things. The other nice thing about doing grass is we don't have to run a replacement campaign in 10 or 15 years. That was always a big concern of mine. Once we get the turf, it's not maintenance free. You have to replace it. So
Sure.
that's another advantage. I know I understand people's disappointment, but there are advantages of that. So
There won't be the runoff that there would be with turf also.
May I ask a question, just in general about the turf? Do they need to prepare the foundation differently in such that there's down the road, if we as a community decide to go try to get some private funding or whatever it would take to do the turf, is there anything that they can do now for the foundation part of that to prepare it? Is there any additional cost now to do that? I didn't know if it was asked or if they talked about that at all.
Actually, to transition from turf to natural surface, they'll have to bring in more topsoil to raise the level of the playing surface to crown the field off. So we've talked about that. So there will be some cost looking at trying to get topsoil to be brought in. There's a number of districts, most of them throughout the state, that transition from natural grass to turf. So it's a pretty common practice to go from one to the other and upgrade. I would say that it's probably cheaper to put it in right away than it is to come back in later on and add it in. But I would also counter that and say the work that they're doing now with looking at putting in natural surface, nothing that they can do now is going to help you for turf later on.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Any of the other committee members that were in the facilities committee have any additional updates that I did not have on the report sheet? We talked about a lot. It was a couple-hour meeting. Tried to hit the high-level stuff.
I definitely appreciate you guys taking the time on these updates because clearly we're not all there. So there's a lot of information to digest. So, I'm sure we'll have questions at our next facilities meetings where we're just, this is hitting us and we have time to think about it. And we can always email you with further questions, obviously, right?
I mean, I guess just throwing it out there because it seems like right now we have weekly meetings and then we get just progress updates and some pictures. And then these kind of sheets. Do we still feel like there's a need to have an hour-long facilities meeting at this point for the project, or can that go to a half hour? Because the last couple of meetings, I don't feel like I've had an hour's worth of updates. We're not necessarily making any big decisions right now. Just throwing it out there for the collective group.
I'm good with starting later.
I mean, I don't want, I mean, I
Yeah,
feel like we gave a pretty thorough update, and
Yeah.
it's 6:24, and we
Right.
started a few minutes late.
Right.
It's not like we have to decide on whether, now, not saying we couldn't extend it in the future, once we get to a point where if there are funds available to do the fifth grade wing and have those discussions and that kind of stuff. But
Sure.
I guess just throwing it out there for the group. I hate to start meetings at 6 and be done by 6:30 and then sit around for a half hour and wait till the 7 o'clock meeting starts.
I think it's a good idea. If it's, clearly you've hit it all. You've hit everything here.
Yeah.
Try it next month.
Lori and Tina were in that meeting. Is there anything I missed significantly that wasn't discussed or mentioned?
The only other thing I can think of, Chris Coluto, who's with OFC, is awaiting our OFCC approval on the next, whatever the next approval is, and he has everything from Glenn with Peterson and from Tina with our district, so we're just waiting on them. There's some kind of MOU. I'm not really sure what it was about, but hopefully then the next phase of that will be approved and we can move forward. That just needs completed so that we get credit for the ELPP project.
Right, it's the construction document phase. We have to get all of those approved in an MOU and a board resolution. You know, as we did the design phase, now we're going to go to the construction document phase. And I think I've had 3 or 4 different emails with Chris today, just to make sure there wasn't anything he needed from us, and he's good. So hopefully we'll hear from him soon as far as when that next phase needs to be approved.
Tina, can you think of anything else we covered that the group might need to know?
No, I know Glenn Renner from Peterson and I are going to schedule some time to sort of sit and go through the budget and finalize some things so that we can create a more user-friendly budget for the board and everyone else. What's included in this GMP 1.1 and GMP 1.2 that's already been approved by the board and covered in the budget of $32 million, and then what is covered or we anticipate being covered by the boosters, and then what our wish list of items are, items 1, 2, 3 that aren't covered now, but if we can, you know, if we find some savings or something in the budget, can move those along. So I'm certainly going to work hard to get that done and updated for everyone so we can include that in our meetings from this point forward. So
Okay, with that being said, do we have any hearing of the public? No. Okay, our next meeting will be June 13th. Propose that we move that meeting to 6:30 p.m.
Are we talking about the partitions any further in this meeting, or are we waiting till the board meeting?
We could have that discussion if you guys wanted to talk about it in a facilities meeting.
Since we have time, I think it
I
would
thought
be
we were going to.
appropriate.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought-
All right.
It's June the 13th. It's June 20th. No, it's still June the
Oh,
13th.
excuse me.
Okay.
June
no,
20th.
June 30th, 13th. Because June 20th is the holiday.
Okay, so we'll add an item to the agenda, and we will continue our conversation that we had last work session meeting in regards to the partitions. So information was provided to the Board of Education in regard to the bathroom partitions, not counting labor. It roughly was about $70,000, rough estimate, which now is going to require, if the board chooses to go in that direction, for us to do an RFP, which is request for proposals, for companies to submit potential bids for the project. This would include roughly 10 restrooms in the middle school and high school, and additional information was provided from the last work session to today, a request as far as any additional information that could be provided in regards to our current facilities, the size of the partitions versus what we would receive if we went in that direction. So hopefully some of your questions were answered as far as the differentials with the upgraded partitions. Did anybody have any questions in regards to the email that I sent today, if you're able to check it?
I thought it just kind of confirmed what we talked about before at the work session, that the top of the panel is less than 7 feet in a new one. It's right at 6 feet now, the old partitions, at least the ones in the high school. 4 inches from the floor. Not sure if that's a proper height. I don't have any questions or anything like that. Mr. Bird mentions he doesn't know how to attach something to the stall doors, but I think I don't know that would be so tough. Maybe probably wrong, don't know.
Well, if we're gonna be updating some of these bathrooms anyways,
Right.
then it makes sense not to do a modification, but just to replace if their stalls are in bad
Oh,
shape anyways.
if they were going to be replaced
Yeah.
in any case. Mr. Ferks, can you tell me where Susan Pytel's room is?
Let's see, that would be just diagonal from the music room.
It's down in the C Hall, what used
Correct.
to be the C, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. I like the thought of doing them a little bit at a time, like that. Not putting the whole cost on 1 year.
One of the districts that we contacted in regards to a reference for this company, they had worked with a neighboring school district, Kettering, and that's how they kind of proceeded with it. Replacement slowly over time because of the cost.
Okay.
Am I on? Okay, so I wasn't able to make the work session because I worked the polls, but I can tell you from the people I've talked to, the $70,000 is a sticker shock price. And the question was always, why aren't we doing something to just make the things private? And I don't know the answer because I wasn't at the meeting.
Well, those things were brought up at the meeting.
Okay.
They were brought up. The
So
price.
that would probably be the concern, is spending $70,000. And then if you do them over time, what happens in the meantime? You've got the issue going on until you get to that particular bathroom.
Yeah, I think what we have in our email is, Mr. Bird's response was that he's not totally 100% sure how you'd attach material to the stall doors that would hold up to wear and tear that those doors take. And that he's also unsure how you'd add anything to the existing doors that would add height either direction, so if that was a concern as well. But I think his main concern is if we try and put, we had suggested like a weather stripping kind of a concept to either cover the hinge side or the door side that would make it more private. And his thought is he's not sure even how to attach that would have the wear and tear and still provide the security. So, and I get that because the material they're made out of and what we'd be attaching to it. So I think it's just figuring out what that is at this point. So, but agreed, because we were the same thing. Like, that's a lot of cash when we're trying to do a building and so on and so forth. That was a great part of the discussion that we had as well. So,
And Julie, if you haven't had the chance, all of these are online. That should be online. You can go back and watch it too and hear the feedback. Yeah, it wasn't directed at you, but there's other people that may be listening in, so.
thoughts from other folks?
So if I'm tracking this right, which I'm not sure I am, so we do a little at a time. What are we doing a little at a time? Completely replacing all the stalls? I mean, is that the big plan then? So we've gone away from the stripping idea because it doesn't sound like there's a good way to do that as of today. I'm just a little unclear what the big plan is to do a little every summer.
Well,
Just want to make sure, and also, where would we start? Where's the priority? The priority of which area would we start in? Would it be the high school? Or since Todd mentioned that the one across from Mrs. Pytel's room, do we start there?
I would think that we would start in the older ones, on the older ones. Mr. Byrd also mentions that he's contacting 2 more suppliers to compare prices at this time. If there's something that can be added to the stall doors, I think all that could be done right this summer.
Just struggling a little bit to understand what the full recommendation is, that's all. And maybe we don't really have it
I don't
right
think there
now.
was.
There's not one yet.
There's not a recommendation.
Not anything,
It was
yeah.
just you guys asked questions, and I
Okay.
provided the information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I just,
So if you guys want to make one, that'd be great, because, I mean, the facilities committee makes recommendations to the school board. And so I would say that would include all of the committee members with the information that's been provided to you folks in regards to cost minus labor, and then additional information that you asked for in regards to size comparisons based on what you have now versus what you would potentially have if you would invest that dollar amount. As far as where it's starting out at, if you would decide, I think the email indicated Mr. Byrd said that the 2 restrooms in the middle school area are in dire need of work. And so I think that would probably be based on his experience in the district as the maintenance supervisor. I would rely on his recommendation on if the school board would decide to go that direction, that we would probably start with those restrooms first.
thank you. I just want to make sure I was reading his information and what we've been sharing, that we're all on the same page. So thank you. And I do appreciate you working with Todd and having him as well go out and get some other estimates and
Sure.
all the responses that you looked for as well. So
Yeah.
thank you. I just
Yep.
wanted to make sure we're all on the same page
Sure.
right now, as of today. Thank you.
Well, and I think one thing we can say, based on both what Julie said and what we talked about in the work session, is there's not a lot of support for spending $70,000. Well, and it's really going to be more than that, because the installation cost is going to be another $70,000, probably. So, I believe, Mr. Ferks, are we still in progress on putting a unisex bathroom in the middle school area? Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you tell us where that's going to be?
We're in the process of securing quotes, once again, for that project. That would be based on materials and labor. I will say that we've had a very generous contribution from a community member. One of our Turkish leaders has donated a significant amount of the material for the project. When you're looking at flooring, ceiling, those type of products, they're on site waiting. So basically, we're just in the process of securing quotes for plumbing and installation of the product. So thank you to that gentleman, Eldar, for his generous donation to the district to help be a part of the solution and not the problem. It's the Janitor Closet right across from Mr. Zinniker's science room. We'll be converting that closet into a family-style restroom. That would provide us with one in each of the buildings in addition to the one we have in the nurses station, the one we have between the middle school and high school office. So that would give us 5 total family restrooms in the middle school and high school. And once again, that would be a summer project, depending upon the cost and if the school board wanted to approve that, based on the cost of it, if it would need your approval. But we do have materials on site, as I mentioned.
And is maintenance going to do that, or are we going to contract that out as well? Do you know?
Well, the installation of like ceiling material and that they can do, but with the plumbing, because it's underneath the slab in the middle school, that would need to be a company come in and run the plumbing. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any thoughts from the Facilities Committee on next steps with the partitions?
Well, I think we ought to be waiting for more prices from other suppliers, first of all, since that's been given that to us today as an option.
Is that something that needs to be formalized, given the cost, or?
It will need to be. So if you would like me to proceed and do an RFP or RFQ, I can.
I think that would be advised in the areas that Todd has suggested. And if we're doing the boys, I would suggest we also do the girls, so that they're all both updated at the same time.
Oh, sure.
And I would get with Tina and see what the budget permits, because ultimately that's what's going to be our constraining factor. One more thing, Tina, see, I told you we're going to add things to your list tonight and put it out, because I mean, we don't know what the funds are available.
So how do you want the scope of work to be listed? All of the restrooms, or just the ones that Mr. Byrd said needed attention first?
I would think the ones first that Mr. Byrd would say, because by the time a year rolls around, price is going to be different anyway.
Okay.
So my question was just gonna be, can we put out a request to see about doing some sort of addition? I mean, maybe other companies have done that, or maybe there's a door that fits better, I don't know. Is there any thoughts on asking that as well? Or have we asked that?
I think Todd's had some conversations with the current distributor, but he can have conversations with others. Okay, so we'll create a request for proposal, get that out ASAP, and we will take a look at 2 restrooms that are located in the middle school wing of the building, and then I will also have Todd follow up with other distributors to see if we can place weather stripping, aluminum, or door sweep type material on our existing doors.
Yeah, some
Is
kind of
it-
privacy cover, yeah.
Is it gonna be 2 bathrooms or 4 bathrooms if we do both the girls and the boys?
It can be whatever the facilities committee wants me to get the RFP for. You want me to get them for all 4?
Yes, and maybe have the secondary ones as optional, but I think if we do the boys, or vice versa, if we do the girls, we should do the corresponding one.
Yeah. He
That's wh-
specifically names the 2 sets, so,
Yes.
Boys' bathrooms?
just boys and girls across from the middle school gym and across from Mrs. Pytel's room
Mhm.
were
Okay.
both noted.
I think so.
All right, so we'll get that together for all 4.
And then just an inquiry to the board, I know we had discussed the urinal privacy screens. Was that something the board was interested in including in this or not? I just want to be thorough.
Yes, I would.
Yes.
I don't think they exist in the bathroom across from the gym.
Correct. I mean, I don't know, you would know.
Okay, so we'll get that put together and get that released. And then I'll have Mr. Byrd follow up with the companies in regards to what other materials can be utilized on our existing doors. Okay, with that being said, are there any items for hearing of the public? Next meeting will be June 13th at 6:30 p.m. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Mrs. Sebastian, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Elam?
You want me to call roll?
Yeah, if you have.
Mr. Gilbert? Mr. Ferks?
Yes.
I say yes. Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Lori Sebastian?
Yes.
Mrs. Reese? Mrs. Franz? So we adjourn at 6:46.